The Chinese railway network continues to expand, and as of late they've just had an annual meeting at Chinese State Railways with a look back at 2003 and what's up ahead for 2024.
It's hard not to find the sprawling Chinese rail network around you. They're still building it, and indeed more than ever. This, as the China we're used to, some would even say they love, is back. All COVID rules have been fully scrapped. Face coverings are only worn as a recommendation, although for some, they stay on during the more colder days of the year. Passes, tests and quarantines, once feared and at one time almost ubiquitous, now are relegated to the historical records of a bygone dark era. On the 9th of January 2024, the China State Railway Annual Work Conference for 2024 began. The results were unexpectedly upbeat, a clear sign China is now fully out of the darkness of zero COVID. Over 3.68 billion rail journeys were completed in 2023 for passenger rail, a record. In fact, on the busiest day of the year, 20 million and counting passenger journeys were completed, that too a fresh new record. This is very clear evidence of just how much of a dent zero COVID had. In 2022, when lockdowns and COVID testing seemed to be everywhere, merely 1.61 billion journeys were made for all of 2024, falling far short of a planned 3.038 billion journeys for that very year, as per state railway operator figures. This gave the railways every bit of confidence to expect 3.855 billion journeys for 2024, 5 million more than the 2020 forecast for that year, which would have been attained except for, of course, the pandemic ruining it. To give you an idea of how damaging the pandemic's extreme zero-COVID policies were, the railways failed to meet their passenger rail estimates for every single year from 2020 through to 2022. The best was off by $500 million for 2021. The worst, of course, over $1.4 billion off for 2022. Cargo also saw more usage, although the biggest leap was from 2021 to 2022, of course as a result of travel restrictions under zero COVID. At 3.91 billion tons carried for 2023, it was a fresh new record, although just 100 million tons more than 2022. Interestingly enough, it fell slightly under expectations, but with a network as busy as this, you almost couldn't tell. The network continued to grow. Investments were relatively steady, remaining in the 700-something billion Chinese renminbi yuan range, especially in more recent years. After adding a massive 8,489 kilometers for 2019, the network continued to grow, although its 2023 addition of 3,637 kilometers for that year was actually less than the 4,000-plus kilometers attained yearly in 2020, 2021 and 2022. Nevertheless, China now has almost a 100,000-mile railway network. Specific stats are 159,000 kilometers for the overall network and 45,000 kilometers for high speed. It still has the world's largest high-speed railway network and shares the world's fastest train with Indonesia now. For 2024, the railways expect, as I just mentioned, 3.855 billion journeys to be made, as well as 3.931 billion tons of freight to be carried. It also expects more than 1,000 kilometers to be added to the network, as well as to finally have transport-related incomes of over 1 trillion Chinese renminbi yuan. The planned network growth for this year interested me, though, as it wasn't as big as I expected. Indeed, here, I'd like to go back to the rather underwhelming plan by the railways of opening a mere 1,000 kilometers of new track for 2024. This, though, makes sense if you consider that the new 8x8 national high-speed network is already 80% built. However, historically and even through zero COVID, the railways have tendentially under-promised and over-delivered, even in the worst of zero COVID and lockdowns-rich 2022. The most extreme case where the railways overdid their new route openings plan was in 2019. Early in the year, the railways planned to open 6,800 kilometers of new track, including 3,200 kilometers of high-speed rail. As per the state operator's stats, actual growth in 2019 added nearly 8,500 kilometers to the network, of which high-speed accounted for nearly 5,500 kilometers. In subsequent years, new lines actually opened would be closer to the planned stats. In 2021, 4,208 kilometers of new lines opened, closer to the original planned addition of 3,700 kilometers, but still over 500 kilometers more. Based on this alone, rail industry estimates of actually around 2,000 kilometers of new lines opening for 2024 isn't that far off. The 1,000 kilometer figure officially declared by the railways appears a little too conservative. One thing is for sure though, by the end of the year, there's a good possibility China will have a 100,000-mile railway network, a goal the first provisional president of the Republic of China, Sun Yat-sen, had around a century ago. It took around 100 years, but finally, we're there.